Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Tim. What's up?
Woohoo!
How you been, man?
Just finished my last exam, so brain is fried but happy.
Are you sewing currently?
I'm currently sewing, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
A man of many talents.
well, I mean, I think I discussed it on the show before, but patches, baby.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Whatever. I'm going to a big engineering student conference in January, and I've decided I need a different scarf with a whole different set of patches for each day.
Okay.
So I am halfway there to get 5 scarves done.
That's a lot of scarves. And all your scarves are just totally covered in patches?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, if anyone's seen me in a tournament, I wear scarves all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And now I have scarves with patches all over it.
Okay. Is this like a Canadian thing or just like a Tim thing?
This is a Canadian engineering thing.
Okay.
I also have my jersey, which has all completely covered in patches too.
Wow, like a NASCAR driver.
Except instead of sponsors, it's all jokes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I've recently not discovered. It's not like I've never worn a scarf before, but I've been wearing scarves pretty much all the time. And it hasn't even really been that cold. It's weird. I don't know. I feel like maybe you just hit a certain age and suddenly you're like, oh, look, a scarf. That's neat. I'll put that around my neck. And obviously you are very young, so that is a cultural thing for you and maybe just an age thing for me. I don't know. But
as someone who's been trying to layer clothing forever because of temperature, not fashion.
Yeah.
Scarves are very useful.
Yeah, Winnipeg, obviously. You're basically in frostpunk up there, so
when the wind chill is measured in how long your skin will freeze, not if it'll freeze, it's cold.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently became aware of a series of hilarious and disturbing photos, basically called whizzicles, which are like when dogs pee and it's so cold that the pee instantly freezes and creates like a yellow icicle that just kind of stands up from the snow. I don't ever want to be anywhere where it's so cold that pee instantly freezes.
The one that's like kind of common too is you like if something's damp, like you're working outside and you like wipe something up with a cloth and then you like chuck it, it'll like be frozen when it like hits the ground and it'll like bounce like a solid object instead of like land like a cloth. I've had that a couple times.
Wow.
Hey, you're like working inside a truck where it's warm and you're like, oh, I gotta mop that up. Chuck it out and it like bounces weird.
And it bounces because it's solid by the time it hits the ground. Yeah. Yeah, no thanks. I'll stick to my DC. It snows an inch and everything gets canceled weather. Which is funny because I grew up in Chicago and obviously I grew up being used to snow. And I guess I don't know. I've been out here too long. I've been in Virginia too long. So anyway, we are going to talk about Legion today, not just about weather and sewing and scarves. Although some of the Legion units and or faction we talk about is slightly snow related. We're gonna kind of revisit our like faction 101s because it's been a while since we've done that. Yeah, it's always a good like 101 topic to do. I feel like things have shifted enough since we've last done this that it's worth revisiting. So we're going to talk about Rebels today because Tim and I have both been playing Rebels. and I've
Yep.
been playing Rebels for the first time in like 2 years, at least 2 years, a little over then. So it's kind of like I don't want to say it's a new experience for me because I played Rebels for a very significant portion of the early life of this game, but it's very different from what I've been doing, which is, primarily clones and Empire. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah, getting used to things dying when they get shot. That's kind of weird. It's,
No. What?
usually
Things
very quickly too.
there's
So
yes.
um so yeah, we're going to talk about Rebels do have a lot of actual advantages though over those two factions as well as over droids. So we'll talk about some of those. We will obviously talk about the things that they're not great at, like durability.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So real quick, what have you been running as Rebels, Tim?
Well, when I found out on cast that the Lando command card can give Rebel Boba an order from the sky again,
Uh-huh. Okay.
I pulled that list out of retirement and feel it again. So it's Rebel Boba plus Lando plus whatever you want. I usually just put it with a bunch of vets.
So this is the basically the thing where ordinarily for Lando to give Rebel Boba an order, since Rebel Boba is a mercenary, Lando would need allies of convenience.
Yep.
But you're talking about Lando's two pip, right?
Two pip, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can give him an order, whatever. So you could give Boba his independent standby, especially when he's in melee, and then still have order control on him with Lando's two pip.
Yeah, which is ace up his sleeve, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I always mix up the card euphemism names for Lando. But, yeah, idiots erase the one pip.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, since that order comes from nobody, then Boba can get it, even though Lando doesn't have allies of convenience. Okay.
Basically.
Well, that's
Which
cool.
yeah, there was a time when that was ruled in the opposite way, and now it's that way. So.
Yes. Yep. Good to know. Yeah, I find myself at PAX. There were a couple games where I had like a bunch of judge calls because my opponent was like, "Isn't this how this works?" And I'm like, "You know what? I don't even know anymore. Let's find out." Like I
Yep.
used to know the answer to this question, but and half the time it was different. So,
Yeah,
always a good idea to just call a judge when you're not sure. But
100%.
that's what they're there for. So don't be. It's not weird to be like, "Can we call a judge?" It's totally normal. Okay. So you've been playing Lando, Boba. What else? Just like a standard Rebel gun line mixed in
Yeah,
there? Okay,
basically,
with
yeah.
vets.
Bets, yeah.
Okay, cool. That's still only like 400 points, probably. What you
Well,
got, like commandos and stuff, or what?
I don't know. Let me pull up the list.
I'm
Well, actually,
curious.
okay. Um, it's this is also my like screw around list. I think it's three vets with their gun, three Mark twos. There's a rebel officer in there. There's a not a Mark two, FD turret
Okay.
with it has HQ uplink generator just because it gets an order out of the bag.
Yep. Okay.
And then two strike teams.
All right. So no
Yep.
Cassian.
No Cassian, no.
Now, is this a I don't think Cassian's good kind of choice, or just like a I want to try something different kind of situation? And if you were like
Uh,
super serious about it, you'd put Cassian in there.
so I love me a Cassian.
Okay.
He's definitely good. I really struggle to fit Cassian and Rebel Boba together because Cassian's command cards would be great for Boba, but they don't work for him.
Right, because Cassian doesn't have a command slot for
Yeah.
allies at convenience. Yeah.
And anytime you have now you have Rebel Boba who's like gonna struggle to get orders sometimes, which sometimes is great when you want to stand by, but also rebels in general and also on this list have terrible order control. So
Yes.
having you like a 130 point unit that could just like sit there and die because you can't fish the order of the bag, it's no bueno for me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I like when I'm built like I often then also run Sabine like in Rebels. I like Sabine. I do Cassian and Sabine together all the time.
Okay.
Like Cassian, Sabine, K2 is a like standard like center of an army for me.
Yeah.
For
Sabine's
Rebels.
interesting. She's another one of those like kind of like Han, where her pistol is basically garbage now.
Yeah.
But explosions is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And obviously she's fast and can grab boxes and stuff. So
She's, I mean, like I don't think I would ever take Sabine to a like competitive, like a long tournament right now. I would definitely take her to like a week, like a one dayer, but she's very much on the like is close to good. Slightly different meta, maybe a points cut, and she's good.
yeah, or some extra dice or some other way
Yeah,
to
some
like make it so that her pistols just don't bounce 100% of the time.
four slot question mark.
um yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously for those that have seen the Ahsoka show, we're way past like whatever the spoiler timeline
Yes.
is here. So yeah, she uses the Force in the Ahsoka show mostly unsuccessfully. I feel like she'd be a good candidate for kind of like a Grogu style situation where she has like a specific ability that's maybe a little bit random, like printed on her card, rather than just giving her a Force slot and letting her take whatever. Since she's so untrained, and also like as a, I'm blanking on the droid's name. Uh,
Oh,
as the
the yeah.
yeah the Jedi temple droid. Um, as he said, basically like she was the weakest student that he'd ever witnessed in
Yeah.
terms of like force ability. So yeah, I feel like something that's like what they did with Grogu, that seems like unexplained territory, a little unexplored territory a little bit, where they could sort of print like weaker / more random versions of force abilities directly on the card rather than giving them a force slot. I feel like they could have done this with Inquisitors. They could do, if they ever do like Padawans for Republic, I feel like they could go this route basically, where you just don't give them a choice, just make it like some kind of weaker-ish but unique force ability that's printed on their card.
Yeah, because Sabine with Force Push I'd be playing her all the time.
Yeah. um and she just from a canon perspective, like she doesn't do anything reliably with the Force, so
No.
it wouldn't really make sense either.
Nope.
Okay. So I have been playing, those that have been listening, of course, know that I've been running Han, Cassian, K2, and Chewie. Teamwork makes the dream work is what I've started calling this list. Because it's double teamwork. All four of your characters have teamwork. I have since seen if I can try and figure out like how to fit more commandos into the list. It started with 2, and now I'm up to 3 full commandos. Basically, it was 11. The one I took to PAX was 11 activations. It had the like Ewoks in there for the reckless diversion gimmick. I found that reckless diversion is still great, but mostly for like the quote unquote traditional use of the card. Where you're just forcing your opponent to shoot something they don't want, or you're forcing them to like split dice pools or otherwise just make awkward choices. I found that it was sort of rare to set up the situation where the Ewoks are like perfectly behind cover and also in the spot that you want them, so that your opponent A has to shoot them and B can only do 1 wound to them per turn. So I don't know that they're worth it specifically just for that gimmick. So anyway, I cut them and got down to 10 activations and added a full command, upgraded one of the strikes to a full commando. So
That sounds worth it.
yeah, I mean the Ewoks actually were great, kind of like on their own in surprising ways. There was a game where I was playing Recover and I was playing against Bright Tree Village, and I really don't like to play against Bright Tree Village on Recover because they have so many units and they have a high activation count, so they can just go last and like rush the middle box with like 3 units.
Yep.
Which sure, I guess you could kill or suppress 1 to 2 of them, but that's not going to be enough to. So anyway, he grabbed the middle box, but I was able to take my own Ewoks and I suppressed his units that were trying to like go get his second home box and kind of slowed him down, and my Ewoks actually got all the way over to his second home box and then ended up like stabbing to death the unit that he had sent over there to claim that box. So they were like heroes in that game. And then there was another game where I faced Wookiees, And again, the melee profile of the Ewoks was actually like pretty relevant in that game. Even though it was just one naked unit of 6 skirmishers, just having something cheap that can run in there and poke, stab with spears was pretty useful. All that said, I think it's probably still better to just do the full commando, because that strike teams are just so bad right now. But
They, unless you have a gimmick for them, they're not good.
Yeah.
The strike teams with Rebel Boba at least have one turn of
roll with
relevance.
respect, yeah.
Yeah, but even then, you can still do that with full teams.
Right. So let's talk some basic, like, just kind of overall, what is it that Rebels are good at, that if you're playing Rebels, you should be looking to like emphasize?
Mobility, high quality shooting, and tricks.
Okay, so let's break each of those down.
So go ahead.
Yeah, because I think I agree with you on all those, but let's start with mobility. What do you mean by like they're good at mobility?
They have a lot of units who, through like keywords and stuff, are pretty good at moving around the table. They also have good ways to deal with suppression. To anytime there's a suppression on the table, get rid of it so they can keep moving. And also, most of their units, though they would like to be aim shooting, that's not really their game plan. So they're often, as long as they have 2 actions, going to be like double moving, move shooting, etc., move grabbing, grab move, etc. So they're, as comparison to a lot of the other armies, they want to be moving a lot more, rather than a lot of the armies that want to sit there and aim shoot, aim shoot, aim shoot.
Yeah, and sort of as an extension of that, I would add that they don't really have a lot of abilities that require all of their units or even some of their units to be close to each other.
Yeah.
The exception being teamwork, which is range 2 and usually only affects, by definition, like 2 models in your army at a time. So whereas like clones and droids kind of have to ball up and have everything in one spot, since rebel units kind of all, they don't share tokens, they don't really hand out tokens to each other even. I mean, I know there's the take cover exists, but it's not super common. And even then it's only like 2, maybe 3 units if you take a scanner on Leia. But like their units are kind of good at operating independently, so you can spread out more. You can get around the edges more. You don't have to be all in one spot. So add that on top of their sort of native mobility, and you get a faction that can get around the table a little more easily.
Yeah.
I think that's worth this. This pains me to say. I feel like that's worth less than it used to be. The lateral movement for purposes of cover denial obviously is not nearly as valuable. That's probably the biggest thing, but also because of a lot of the changes to how scoring and objectives work. Just the quote unquote playing the objective is less. It's still, don't get me wrong, that's like how you win the game, but it's definitely skewed more towards like just kill your opponent's units and away from winning via pure playing the objective, which also dents the value of that mobility a little bit. It's definitely not gone. There are some objectives where that's still super useful, and being able to spread out still has its uses, but it's that mobility has definitely been devalued, let's say that, recently with some of the changes. So
yeah, 100%.
All right, so the second thing you said was reliable ranged damage.
Well, I said high quality shooting.
Okay, high quality shooting. Okay.
And I said that deliberately in that a lot of their shooting is not that many dice, but will get through cover, usually get like often has high velocity or critical, a lot of pierce, which gets it through the various defensive tech that's available. So that when they shoot, they might not do 10 damage like a clone can do, but they'll probably almost always do 1, 2, 3, 4 damage, very reliably.
Yeah, I mean, I would say particularly at longer ranges,
Yes.
they have a lot of access to range 4 critical, right? Both their primary core choices, rebel troopers and vets have access to a range 4 gun with critical. And with decent amount of dice too, right? Like the DLT has 3 dice and the CM93 has 4. Whereas you look at like the B1 equivalent of this and they have 2 dice with critical 1. And there's only one choice for that, and the same for clones. Empire, of course, that's Shores, but then that's critical 1 instead of critical 2, and they're like significantly more expensive than vets. Now, mortars are way better than MK2s, but we'll leave that discussion for another day. So yeah, I would say that they have a lot of long range, highly reliable shooting that has some combination of critical, marksman, pierce, high velocity, usually in smaller quantities, but it does add up, you know. Playing the Cassian Han list, it's kind of built like that, right? Like all your units have long range but small dice pools. But based on how reliable it was, I found that like it really, it does accumulate. I thought I would struggle against kind of threat saturation lists, like a Wookiee. I faced a Wookiee skew, I faced a Black Sun Shadow Collective list, and I faced the 14 activation Bright Tree Village, and it handled all of them at range. And I was really impressed by that. I did not think that it was going to have that much raw firepower. I built a list thinking like, all right, I'm going to build this list so that even if I'm dealing with barrier and dodges, I can pick up like a handful of clones a turn, and I'll just, death by 1,000 cuts those red save armies. And it turns out like death by 1,000 cuts when you're doing it like reliably and repeatedly actually adds up quite nicely. So
well, and you can usually engage your opponent a full turn before they can engage you. And if you're really good at controlling your ranges, not only can you shoot them for a turn before they shoot you, but like you're slowing down their approach, right? If they don't have ways to deal with suppression, you can like even bring that to like 2 turns before they can really deal with you. Which is, if you can shoot at them for like 1.5, 2 turns before they can shoot you, like basically any army in the game will take out another army, like not fully, but like attrition wise, if they get a turn and a half or 2 turns of free shooting at them.
So how do you do that? Control your ranges, like in a granular way. How is it that you actually do that?
So I mean, there's the very specific way of like, so if you're at range 4 gun line, like you have a lot of range 4 guns, you get right to the edge range 4.
Exactly range 4, right?
Exactly range 4, and then because a move is 5.9 whatever inches and not actually 6 inches.
A speed 2 move.
Yeah, a speed 2 move. Yeah.
Yep.
It means that you can't move shoot. So if something's exactly range 4, you can't move shoot them in range 3. And a lot of like the clones, and Empire and droid gun lines are all range 3 gun lines, although often the best lists of those factions actually have ways to flex out of that for that reason.
Right. Yeah, like clones have been taking more RPSs and arc snipers and combining those with fire support to have like a nasty range 4 attack. Obviously, droids have those B1. I hesitate to call them sniper rifles, but that's like basically what they are. The 2 dice critical weapons, which aren't great, but they're also cheap and plentiful. And then, of course, Empire. I would say Empire can kind of go pretty pound for pound with the like long range shooting as rebels. They don't have as much pierce. They're not quite as good at stacking that particular keyword. But between Shores and Mortars and Snipers and Iden and Inferno and stuff, they do have, and Bosk, they do have quite a lot of long range criticals. So I would say they can go toe to toe with rebels at that range. But generally speaking, almost universally, more like things are deadlier at short range than they are at long range. And given how squishy rebels are, you want to keep stuff in those less deadly range bands typically. So,
yep. And you also want to be like basically always engaging their most their farthest forward unit, right? So that you're not letting them sort of double back on you. And then also like you sort of want to like move forward, attack, and then to get another turn to do it, you could even like, and then the next turn you attack and fall back, right? So you, as long as you can with the objective, fade away from your opponent, and now they're sort of chasing you, and you can usually have Like if you have, move forward aggressively right off the bat, you often have sort of a range band or two that you can sort of fade back without sacrificing the objectives too much.
Yeah, that's one reason I like recon intel on my vets, because you can often kind of recon like right into exactly range 4 of something,
Yeah.
and then the first turn just shoot and then back up.
Yep.
And that works obviously for things like commandos and stuff too at range 5. So yeah, that historical term for it is quote unquote kiting, but basically the whole like shooting and running, shooting and running, shooting and running. Particularly if it's a list that has shorter range than you. Those melee skews I mentioned, but also like even like a range 3 clone or droid list, that's going to be to your benefit to just keep them at stiff arm them basically for as long as possible. So
Well, and those clone lists too. You don't want to be taking full clone shots at range 3 on your vets, no matter what,
no,
because they're just going to be gone.
right.
But if you're taking, a sniper shot or 3 sniper shots over the turn from clones, well, that's going to kill 1 unit over the turn, but not 1 unit per shot. So that's why controlling that range is super important.
And if you have any of your own defensive tech like guardian or dodges, it's going to help a lot against those longer ranged attacks that generally can't stack dice in the same way. So
Yep.
Okay, so and the third thing you mentioned was tricks. What do you mean by tricks?
Tricks is largely command cards.
Okay.
Right. Command cards are very powerful. We've mentioned explosions already. There's command cards that let you move your opponent's units. Looks like Luke. Ones that let you move your own units, Leia and Luke as well. Luke can make your opponent not be able to attack. Luke has a lot of tricks.
Hang on. While we're on the Luke subject, can we talk real quick about serve and how that interacts with token sharing? Because I feel like
Yes,
this is
that's a good one to talk about. Yep.
this is another thing. It did not used to be this way. So the way serve used to work, and this like kind of cleaned up a lot of weird rules questions, the way they essentially defined this. When serve first came out, basically for the duration of the serve ability, which is, you can target an opposing unit and that opposing unit either attacks or moves. You attack or move with that unit as the Luke player. The way it used to work is like for the duration of that effect specifically, that unit was friendly to the Luke player and like defined as an opposing unit for the other player. And like the way that basically that just cleaned up all the like, well, what happens with shared tokens? What happens with like attacker defender, because you can't usually shoot your own units. What like and since I guess since the CRB, that's been kind of muddied a little bit, and now it's to if it doesn't change like the alignment of the target. So it's not clear to me how the actual attacking bit even works given that. But the bottom line is for like shared tokens, for example, on a luminous being's turn, if you use serve on a clone unit, that unit can spend all of the available tokens that it would normally be able to spend as a clone unit, including like all of Yoda's tokens from Luminous.
Yep.
So you can use serve to basically like not only dump those tokens, but use them on an attack that you're making.
Yep.
So,
I mean, the way that works now, you could really hamper clones for a turn because you could spend, 2 of their surge tokens, and a lot of clone lists are running quite lean surge token
yep.
pools now. I mean, you have to roll the surge results to spend them, but like you're able to like empty out the surge bank right off the bat like that. Wouldn't be good.
Yeah, and there's usually a couple aims in there with Luminous. So, if you target something that has a pretty big dice pool, like an arc unit at range 2, seems like the ideal choice for this. But even like a normal Z6, I think would be just fine. Your likelihood of rolling 2 surges in there, particularly when you also have 2 aims to work with, is pretty high.
Yep.
And then they're gonna, probably spend those dodges on the defense. Now, I will say the one thing about this tactic is that Luke has to be at range 1 of the target. And if you're doing this like early on the Luminous turn, hopefully you have some well-located line of sight blockers so you can, kind of get in there, use the ability, and then get back out. But just be mindful of the fact that like if you're going first with Luke for this, usually going first with a force user into another force user is not a good idea.
Well, and Yoda's hanging out nearby too.
That's what I mean. That's the force user you'd
Yeah.
be going first into. Now, if you can somehow use this to like kill Yoda, then obviously,
Oh, mwah.
right, like he'd be potentially a great target for this ability, especially like if you, it won't work with the arcs because they have immune deflect, but like if you shot Yoda with a Z6, and he spent any dodges on that, then he'd potentially be deflecting
Yeah.
against his own clone units, which would just be like icing on the cake. I'm not necessarily advocating for that. You might have better targets depending on the game flow situation and everything, but just be mindful of the fact that you like don't sacrifice Luke to pull off this trick, even though it's amazing and hilarious. It's not going to be worth the trade.
No.
So
This will come up more just as it could happen,
yeah.
and also like for just like clone to regular token sharing.
Yep. Yeah, it's not by any means any sort of it's a tool in the toolbox rather than like a strategy for like this is how my list is going to deal with Luminous. I'm going to just use serve, that like I'd say probably 80% of the time it's not going to work like you think it will based on where everything's located and how you can get Luke in there and stuff. So
YOLOing towards a Yoda gun line does not sound like the best way to deal with it.
no. Generally not. So yeah, there's that as a trick. Certainly they're all of Han's command cards, Han by definition, just maximum shenanigans, change of plans. Of course, you can kick back any command card in the game, and then reckless diversion we already talked about, and I've talked about extensively. And then of course, sorry about the mess being a 0-pip. There's lots of uses for that beyond just having Han go. I'd say, I mean, depending on your order control situation. But if you have like uplinks or Cs and you want to go with a specific unit and just guarantee that happens with sorry about the mess, you can do that. So
yep. We also have the best contingencies use in the game.
Yep.
One, because it's contingency 3, so you get the most contingency card. But also Lando's 2-pip actually has a use to be played out of the contingencies of discarding it to get an order.
Yep.
So
which means you get value out of it even if you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. And generally with command cards and rebels, I think that rebel heroes are typically a little bit cheaper than the other factions, which means that you can run multiples of them together, and that typically means that you have like a higher quality command hand.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's pretty unusual for almost any rebel list to be using the generic cards, excluding Echo Base, which uses its own Echo Base cards, which are obviously great. But like I can't think of the last time I've seen like push or assault in a rebel list or ambush.
Yeah, no.
Speaking of Sab comms, potentially an interesting tool against something like Luminous. Obviously they still get one face up, and if they have a clone commander, they have direct. So they're still going to get like one, possibly two fire support options in there. But I mean, you could potentially mess with their fire support setup for a Luminous turn if you play Sabcoms on that turn. So
yeah, if Sabcoms very much feels like if you're playing Lando anyway and you have contingencies, Sabcoms might not be the worst thing to throw in that contingencies.
Yeah, I struggle to see like a common rebel build where you actually have that 1-pip slot available. Any sort of like Cassian Han, you're taking a crack shot, and sorry about the mess. Cassian Ahsoka, you're obviously taking crack shot, and Ahsoka's 1-pip. In your Boba Lando situation, Boba has great 1-pips, and Idiot's Array is decent. I could potentially see taking it over Idiot's Array, since you can with contingencies. I guess you can take both of them.
Well, so
he's got what contingencies 3.
Contingency 3. So let me pull up my.
That'd be a lot of slots. That'd be a lot of contingency slots to use on 1-pips, but
yeah. Well, so you might find this interesting. So my command hand for Lando Boba which I have played them somewhat extensively, both in its previous iteration and this one. So in the actual command hand, 1 pips are Whipcord Launcher and Ambush, surprisingly.
Okay.
2 pip making his way in the galaxy and then Push. And then Rule Respect and Jetpack Rocket. And then in the contingencies, we have Idiot's Array and Simple Man, and then Ace Up His Sleeves.
Interesting. Okay.
So, because one of the things about contingencies is the contingency commander has to be alive,
Right.
and the person who has that command card originally has to be alive.
Right.
So I often like to, when I'm playing contingencies, have a couple generics, and then contingencies out of the generics into the specific ones.
That way you're not locked out, basically.
Yeah, that way you're not locked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And it also can, especially like, so you play when you have 2 different options in 1 pip, you don't have to make that contingency choice till your opponent has like played their command card and you can see what they're doing. And there's a lot of situations where like you might decide between Idiot's Ray or Simple Man based on what they play.
Yep.
So being able to flex between the two is quite fun.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Interesting. I hadn't considered that as a use of generics, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. This is also a list. I mean, if like Boba Fett, like if I had the Mercenary Order Giver command thing on Lando, I'd also consider just Sabcoms instead of Ambush as a generic.
Yep. Underworld Connections.
That one.
Yep.
It's been a long day.
Yep.
So anyway, that is a use that at least I like to get out of the generics, is using them as options for contingencies.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So those are you as strengths we listed mobility, long range, firepower with like high quality attacks, sometimes small dice pools, but basically like reliable long range firepower. And then tricks or shenanigans. Any other strengths I think that we can add to that? I'd say that they can be good at managing suppression.
Yep.
They have access potentially to a lot of inspire. Bright Tree Village lists obviously have 3PO with compel. I would say that they can also have problem with suppression.
Yep.
Because those keywords tend to be gated behind the quote unquote pure support heroes, right? Leia, 3PO, the generics. Whereas the hybrid / combat characters don't really have ways to deal with that. Obviously, Cassian has some command cards that, he's volunteer mission and last stand both strip suppression, but they only do it from characters or special forces.
Yep.
Which doesn't help your Courage 1 core, who are the ones that need it the most. Obviously, you could take like lead by example on any character with a command slot if you needed to, but that's kind of expensive. So I would say that depending on how you build them, they can be great at suppression or they can struggle with it.
Suppression is definitely something you need to think about when doing rebel lists.
Yes.
And if you don't think about it, they can get boned by it. Another thing they can do is they could really amp the activation count up pretty high. Because their units are often cheaper in price.
Yep.
They like most rebel lists are running 10 plus activations. Not like just based on like, oh, I can fit another unit in.
Yep. Yeah, I can't think of a time when I've seen like a serious 9 activation rebel list recently.
No.
And it's even, and you don't even have to take like strikes and MK2s and stuff to get there. Just be like, I'm here running full commandos, 3 full commandos with a bunch of characters, and I'm still at 10 activations. So,
I mean, full commandos are under 80 points, right?
76.
So, like, any unit that's under 80 points is, on average, getting you to 10 activations or more.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and even most of their common characters are 100 points or less. So Ahsoka and Luke obviously being the exceptions to that, and then Boba. But generally speaking, like Cassian's 90, K2's 80,
Yeah.
Leia's 80. All the Bright Tree Village characters are ridiculously cheap. So
Yep.
Chewie's 90.
Yep.
Speaking of Chewie, should we talk about their weaknesses? I think we have to lead this with durability, right?
Yep. They can just go poof.
Yeah. So beyond just the fact that almost all of their units are white saves, which is obviously worse than red saves, they tend to lack defensive keywords. The exception, of course, being Bright Tree Village, where almost your entire army has low profile, and Commandos / Han, who also have low profile. But generally speaking, like vets have no special defensive tech. They have defend 1, but how often are you actually getting your vets orders? And even then, it's just 1 dodge token.
Yeah, big
that
whoop.
they can't share with each other. Rebel troopers used to be like sort of weirdly durable with the whole vigilance, situational awareness dodge thing that they could do, but they made all of that significantly more expensive, such that it's now like basically cost prohibitive. So
It's significantly more expensive, and the meta is such that Clone's fire support doesn't care about what dodge.
right, like they were great at mitigating chip damage,
Yep.
because it was 1 dodge that you could negate a crit with that was just there all the time.
Yep.
But when your opponent's rolling in with like 8 to 10 paint on an attack, it's like, okay, take 2 for cover, spend your 1 dodge, roll 7 saves, the unit still dies. So yeah, it's just the whole 1 dodge thing just isn't that great anymore. And the same is true of low profile, really. I mean, low profile does help, but there are a lot of things and keywords in this game that just ignore cover, like critical, obviously sharpshooter, blast. Anytime something with low profile is getting hit with any of those, it's very sad.
And on top of that, like if you throw 12 hits at a low profile unit, well, hurrah, they're dead.
Right, because they still have white saves. Like Ewoks don't even surge,
Yeah.
typically. So yeah, Ewoks, Commandos, either of them get hit by something like that, you're just going to pick up the entire unit. So
Basically, your entire army is always, or every unit in your army is basically 1 shot away from dying at any given point.
yep, which makes you very careful, or it should.
Yep.
You have to be conscious of that with your positioning, and just be like extremely aware of all your opponents threatening things, because even things that have relatively small dice pools can still really do a lot of damage to your units. So, and rebel units tend to be also like not backloaded. By that I mean that as they lose models, their offense really suffers quite a bit. Even vets who have a 4 dice critical 2 weapon on the back end of their attack pool, like their range 3 attack is really helped by those black dice, and when they start losing black dice, it's pretty bad. So yeah, just even taking like you eat a shot and you take 2 to 3 casualties, that unit is basically combat ineffective.
Yep.
So yeah, you just have to be extremely hyper aware of everything that can potentially shoot your units. And the second thing is, it might feel like a waste of time, but it is useful to build in defensive tech anyway, or at least try to. The dodge thing is too expensive now. I wouldn't really recommend that, but you can do like Chewie is great because he's a good unit to just have on the table anyway. His attack is pretty good. He's got 4 dice with critical and pierce and impact. He's got 4 red in melee, which if push comes to shove and you're like knee deep in Ewoks or something, is actually pretty solid. The number of times that Chewie and K2's combined 4 red attack pools have saved me from like a melee skew is non-zero. But then of course if you give him protector, he can just like strip crits out of attack pools, and particularly when you're using that on units that already have something like low profile, suddenly like a 6 or 7 hit shot, low profile strips 3, Chewie strips another 3, suddenly you're rolling like 1 to 0 saves and you're basically fine. Chewie's great for keeping those fragile units at full strength.
Yeah.
Obviously he's only got 9 health himself, so you can't just be doing that on like every attack or Chewie will just disappear. And the number of times I've just straight up, Chewie's got like 1 wound left and I get a big shot in on like commandos or vets or something, and I'm just like, do I just eat this with Chewie and just send him off into into the sunset? And there are a couple times where I've just done that. I've been like, all right, sorry Chewie, here's 3 hits on Chewie. Oh look, he dies. Okay. Because a 1 wound Chewie, it's like he pokes his face out there, he's gonna die anyway. So
I often, when get him down to 1 wound, try to get 1 more shot out of him, and then bye.
And then eat a 3 hit shot from somewhere with Guardian. Yeah.
I mean, also like once he's at 1 wound, like him stepping out and taking a shot, well, either they're gonna shoot something near him and he's gonna Guardian it away, or they'll shoot him. In which case he's done his job anyway. So.
Yep. Yeah. That doesn't mean you should definitely not be careless with Chewie's wounds, because as we noted, his attacks are good. Obviously, he's got teamwork with Han, so if you're running Han and Chewie together, there's some value there. But, yeah, I mean that's what he's for. He's for keeping your fragile units at full strength.
He often can be thought of as like really a like 3 or 4 wound character that's gonna eat, 3 or 4 shots at the beginning of the game for your other units.
Yep. And sometimes he rolls saves and you're like, hey, look at that. What the heck?
Or sometimes he rolls all surges and you feel really sad.
Yes, that's definitely happened. Man, that would be amazing if Rebel Chewie had a reliable like Republic Chewie.
So good.
It'd probably be too good.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then of course you can take medics. I don't know that I would take a lot because they're expensive. 18 points is a lot, but
one medic in a Rebel squad is often a good include.
Yep.
Like maybe not most, but like a lot of Rebel squads having 1 medic is really good value.
Yep. All right. So that's the durability weakness. Are there any other? I mean, we sort of mentioned suppression in certain builds. Would you say there's others for rebels?
I mean, the durability is the biggie.
Yep.
I don't have another one off the top.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's their primary one, really. I mean, it's a pretty big one when like that's kind of the whole ball game, right? Is having units alive on the table. But yeah. So in summary, rebels good at shenanigans, mobile. They can spread out, and they don't have to commit to one particular spot or angle. They're good at long range shooting, and they're made of peanut brittle. So be careful.
Basically.
Yeah. I really enjoy playing them. I wouldn't say I was feeling bored, but I was feeling like things were getting a little stale for me before PAX, and then I'm just like, I'm gonna try Rebels, and then I tried Rebels at PAX, and it was great. It was super fun. I loved playing Han and Cassian, and I've kind of got that like, hey, I'm a Rebel player again, fire under me a little bit. I don't know if I will be able to play them for Worlds or not. It depends a lot on Inquisitor timing. If Inquisitors come out before then, I might. I mean, Force users are my thing, and they're the cheapest possible Force users imaginable. So I might have to do that. We'll see.
Imaginable yet? Who knows?
Yeah, I guess that's true. I have a hard time picturing how you can go even lower, but yeah. So we'll see. But it's on the table. I was pleasantly surprised by them at PAX. So
Rebels are a lot of. I mean, locally at all our local stuff, I play largely Rebels, and I mean to a lot of my locals, I'm known as Rebel player, even though sort of on the more broad scale, I'm a Republic player, but
Right.
Rebels are very much my like. I mean, they're lists that are good, but when I want to have fun, I always play Rebels. Like just having fun,
Yep. They are
and
fun.
then like I will take them to tournaments once in a while too, because they do have their moments where they are also really good.
Yeah, and you can surprise people with stuff too. Like
Oh yeah,
especially because people don't face that sort of thing very often.
yep.
So you can surprise them with the firepower. You can surprise them with the command cards. You know, there was a moment at PAX when I played Reckless Diversion, and my opponent was like, "Wait, what does that do?" And I was like, "Yes, this is going to be a good Reckless Diversion play right here."
Yeah. I
So
mean, sort of a meta thing I heard, I don't know, on some other gaming site slash whatever, was they were talking about like win rates and like, would you take a 5% win rate cut on a list to have a list that would surprise people? And the sort of general agreement was yes, right? Because like if you're taking the absolute meta thing that you know has a 55% win rate, but everyone has a plan for you. Whereas if you take a different list that has a 50% win rate with will surprise people, you might end up doing better at a tournament with the actually lower win rate thing, but you'll surprise some people.
yeah, I think that sort of depends on what your goal is. Like if your goal
Yep.
is to win the entire thing, um, you're not going to surprise the players that you're going to be facing in the last couple rounds. Probably.
Well,
Um,
it has happened.
it has it it happened to me. But tip like I would say generally speaking, um, that's
I
not going to happen.
Yeah,
So
this was I don't know, maybe it was Sigma or something with sort of a larger, more complicated game where there's just more things to know.
yeah,
Legion still, and I think it will remain that like um you don't have like a lot of the like not even the highest echelon of players know every single keyword of every single unit
right.
and every single command card, right? Whereas there's other games where there's just so much that even the highest echelon might not know exactly every word on every card.
Yep.
Um, so
And I think personally that's a good thing with Legion. Um,
yeah, I enjoy it.
I think things get too bloated, it becomes hard to balance, you know, and um it becomes, you know, like if there's more that's kind of in the realm of the known, then it's more about what's actually on the table. Um,
Instead of gotchas, yeah.
instead of playing gotcha. Yeah. So um
Yep.
yeah, all right. Well, any final thoughts?
It's cold. I'm ready for not school for a little while.
It was 60 degrees here today.
Oh, screw you. I mean, it's actually warm in Manitoba. It's been like freakishly warm.
Okay.
And where's my map? It is currently minus 10 degrees Celsius, which is 2015 Fahrenheit.
Okay,
And
that's pretty cold still.
we think of that as like people talk about like how warm it is.
Yep. Yeah.
Anywho,
Yeah, I'll take my 60 degrees. Thank you very much. My random flowering plants in winter that are confused situation.
that's congratulations.
All right. Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels on Kyle.
I'm Timbo.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.